All right, so welcome to a new episode of the Shit Take. On this episode, we're going to be discussing movies, horror movies that we think are considered overrated. Um, yeah, so this week we're doing it's our first episode of our horror month, really. So each week we're going to do something different. This week we're doing overrated movies, and next week we're going to go with our lists for underrated movies. And then the third week we have something different planned. And then the last week, we're going to actually specifically look over one particular movie, and that should kind of close out our horror month. And we're going to post that one actually on the Sunday, which is going to be actually Halloween on the 31st. So that's going to be a little bit different. So I'm Stellaby, as always, my partner, Arrow for the win, and let's go.
All right, once again, thank you for joining us on our first Halloween episode of the month of our Spooktober Spooktacular. So yeah, like he said earlier, it's just going to be like this month, breaking down like different, parts of the horror genre, going from 1 week of overrated movies, 1 week of underrated movies, and we have a review of one movie in probably be our last week of October, just kind of like a breakdown of it, deep dive, whatever. And yeah, we're going to be taking it away here in a bit with our top 5 and our overrated movies. And I think Stellaby is going to start us off today.
Yeah, so at number 5 for me personally, I know it's been really popular, and I know that the second one just came out recently, but I personally find A Quiet Place to be a little bit overrated. So it's one of those movies that I feel like it's relying really heavily on a gimmick. And don't get me wrong, it's really exciting to see, a movie that's almost, I don't know what, it's like 75% sign language.
Yeah,
like it's huge. So, I mean, that's really respectable. For sure, it's respectable. It's absolutely respectable. But there's a lot of things that I find to be a little bit weird with the movie itself. The big one for me is if a monster can hear you, and its ability is to hear like the slightest of sounds, then like you've seen the movie, like you hear the feet rustling in the sand itself. All of that's going to be heard. Every single bit of that's going to be heard. They're going to hear every single thing, and so I mean, it's one of those movies that I think has a lot of plot holes, and it's frustrating, I guess, to watch it.
First of all, touching up on the whole sign language, like there's only one other modern like Hollywood produced movie that I think even touches on sign language at all, and that's Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
The little girl, she actually is, American Sign Language actress, and I do believe, as is the main daughter in A Quiet Place, and that's something that they all learned. Like that's not fake. Like they all really just spoke to each other like that, and I think that is a big part of the movie. There's no denying that. But also, I mean, like how minute of a sound are these creatures picking up on? Because there's even a scene in the second one, and obviously going over this list, spoiler alerts if you haven't seen any of these movies that we're touching up on.
Spoiler alerts.
Yeah, always spoiler alert. There's a scene where they're escaping by car in a like a little like, I don't know, pilgrimage, if you want to call it that, village, and there's people running around, they're screaming, terrified of their life, but like monsters like specifically goes after them in the car. Like, is it picking up on the louder sound as a perceived threat, or it's just like, is it really choosing them because as the main characters, that's what we're supposed to be following? Well, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of that point. Like, if these things hearing is so good, right? Like in the first movie, whenever she's down in the basement and the water's coming down, it's flooding, and she's holding the baby's cooing. Every single one of those noises will be heard, on top of the water being heard. You know what I mean? Like, it's not one or the other. It's not the louder, destroys the smaller. Is it that way for us? You know what I mean? It's not. Like, whenever we hear things, we hear something, and if there's something else that's less audible, but in the background, we still hear that as well. Like, so these things will still hear those things. I mean, and one of them heard the corn No, the corn noises from inside the house, I believe it was, or something like that.
Yeah. I think there was two in the fields. They think they ran over one with the truck, and then like for when they're in their like the silo. And then while that's happened, the other one is there with the mom. She's like trying to keep the baby under over the water, put her in the little oxygen tank.
And if you can hear the sound of the corn in the silo, you're gonna hear the sand that they're kicking around all movie long. Like you're gonna hear every single thing. If their hearing is that strong that they can pick up on things from that far away, then they're gonna hear all of that. And I feel like, obviously it's a movie, but it's just one of those movies that after I watched it, like the whole time I was sitting there thinking, that just, I don't know, it didn't make any sense to me.
I mean, and it sucks too because it's one of those movies that like tries to world build within the movie itself, and like you can kind of see like when John Krasinski's character is like kind of like hearing weakness, like he's writing that down. Like nobody ever says that, of course, because they're not talking in the movie. But it's like it's up to us as the audience to kind of like infer that because we're little to no information about these creatures. Even in the second movie, which is part sequel, part prequel, we still receive very little information about these creatures in the beginning of the movie, and by the end it's kind of like, all right, like we have a defined weakness, quote unquote, but and who knows if they do a third. It got a lot of buzz, it was like, written, directed, starring John Krasinski,
I just feel like it's one of those movies that the things that it does really well, right? Like highlighting the sign language, people with hearing issues or hearing disabilities. Like I feel like a lot of the times those movies are looked at and rated despite the problems in the movie. And that's why I think that's why I personally feel it's overrated, because I don't know, I feel like if you're gonna rate something, you need to rate it appropriately. And like if I'm rating an old movie, right, like I'm not gonna look at, say, The Exorcist, right? Let's just take The Exorcist for example. I'm not gonna look at The Exorcist and say, well, it's been done better, so clearly The Exorcist is shitty. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because what they were working with back then is not what we're working with now. Like, how are you going to judge a movie that was made, at that time, compared to a movie that was made 40 years later?
Yeah.
It's always going to lose. Like, what we're allowed to do these days it's completely different. The random person walking on the street's going to be able to do more with their phone than they were able to do with a fucking professional budget with The Exorcist.
Yeah. Editing software, which didn't exist back then, special effects, it was all practical. Like like maybe a rope and pulley system where now you can probably create an entire like church filled with demons and blood coming out of the walls with hey, look, I did this all Photoshop. Like, okay, like it's crazy. I think this took 14 years to film, right? Oh my god. All right, so for my top 5, a little bit of a newer film. It's not like super duper old, but I wanted to go with All Hallows Eve / a Terrifier. Just like, I feel like those types of movies that just overdo it on like the gore and like mindless, like fucking like, it's not even a slasher film at that time. It's kind of just like it's like what separates it from a freaking snuff film, man.
Yeah.
The character of Art the Clown is just like, I mean, it's like what can I say about Art the Clown as a character? Like almost nothing. Like there's no real motivation or goals or anything. It's just a guy who like randomly shows up, starts killing people, mutilating them, and like this like overly grotesque. And I hate saying it like that, but it's just like I watch these movies, and I'm just like, like what the hell's the point? Yeah, personally, like I know there's some huge horror film buffs out there, and that maybe that's never gonna be me. But it's just like whenever I like see something through the eyes of what this film was trying to portray, and I just like there's no real plot, there's no character development.
It's lazy.
Yeah, and it's just like, what's the point? Like there's really no protagonist, upstarting an adversity or an antagonist. So it's just like I don't see the point in watching something like that. Yeah. Like, I feel like it's lack of imagination.
Yeah, it's one thing to make a movie like that, right? Like, it's one thing to like that kind of movie, right? Because you're free to like whatever you want to like it. You're free to
Yeah.
like it. But whenever a movie it goes beyond just being a horror film and ends up being something even more,
Yeah.
like that's the kind of movies I feel like we start to look at under a different microscope.
Mhm.
And whenever you're sitting here telling me that this movie is fantastic, and you're putting it really high up there, and everyone's like, "Oh, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this," and I watch it, and it's lacking of a plot. It's just complete gore for gore's sake, and it's lazy. I'm not interested in those movies. I'm really not.
I think that honestly, like that's sort of like even speculation at best. It's like it really prevents people from sharing stuff because you're like, damn, like, am I looking at this through a certain level of scope that I want to introduce to somebody else, and maybe they just don't like it or they don't see it the same way I do. But, when you take that general consensus on a movie like this, and you're just like, oh man, like, the gore was really cool, like, yeah, did you see the way he killed that person? It's just like, yeah, I saw it because that's all they were doing was killing people. Like, okay, like, you shot somebody, through the back of the head with a gun, and then, cut them in half with a hacksaw. Like, is that cool? Like, just I feel like I don't know, and it's like I know that they've announced a couple more films in that series, so I don't know, maybe like have some semblance of a plot going forward.
My number 4 is going to be kind of twofer. It's mostly based on the reviews that it gets from critics, and mostly, if I'm being completely honest, it's my absolute hate for Rotten Tomatoes. 2 movies, Get Out and Us. I loved Get Out, I did, and I loved Us. They're both, I do find them both, to be very good movies. Whenever I'm being told by a movie review company like Rotten Tomatoes that Get Out and Us are both in the top 15 movies of all time, that's whenever that's clear overrated. These 2 movies are very good. They have very good messages, obviously, very easy to understand messages, and he did a good job of communicating that because they're important messages for everyone to understand. I love Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Jordan Peele. I don't think that he is the best director of all time. Because if you're asking me, right, if somebody comes onto the scene and makes 2 movies and they both become top 15 movies of all time, you're immediately looking at this person like, oh, well, they have to be one of the best directors of all time. One of the best creators.
He's a Scorsese of our generation, right? Like,
exactly, right? And this is coming from Key and Peele. Like,
yeah.
Don't get me wrong, some of those skits are great, but some of them are pretty, like, they're hit and miss, but a lot of them are fucking miss.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean...
I couldn't tell you my favorite episode of Key and Peele. I can show you sketches I liked.
You already know, man.
I wouldn't be able to say, like, one complete episode. I can give you sketches.
No episode, just a sketch.
Yeah, like, it's crazy.
But, again, I love those movies. I do love those movies. I do think that they're very good. I don't think they're in the top 15 of all time. And Rotten Tomatoes, if for any reason that you ever catch, wind of this right here, you're absolutely a fucking corrupt company. Like, there's no 2 ways about it. There's no 2 ways about it. If you look at the comparison between the actual critic reviews and the user reviews, like, oh my god, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
This is from a site, mind you, and I hate to derail this, but this is a site that has like admitted to freezing user reviews when certain movies came out, so that you wouldn't be able to like review bomb them. And I know review bomb can go both ways, so I'm not like condemning that practice at all, because it should be well within the user's rights to tell you that a movie's bad.
Yeah.
Not just look at the reviews for like the critics and just be like, oh, I gotta check this movie out. Like, if something's bad, you should be able to say like, hey, I don't want to watch this. I don't think this is cool, and I don't like that. People are calling it good for no reason. So I definitely understand that.
Yeah.
But whenever you're a company that is basically your entire model is reviewing things and then not allowing user like feedback into that, like, that's insane, man.
Well, my biggest problem, right, is like if you look at Rotten Tomatoes top, movies of all time, in their top 15, okay, you have 5 movies that predate 1942, and you have 10 movies that were all made after 2017. So Rotten Tomatoes is essentially saying that between 1942 to 2017, not a single movie was made to hit the top 15. And I mean, just use your brain.
70 years. In
Just
70
use your
years. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Like, Forrest Gump was made within that time.
I mean, Titanic, Terminator 2, like, what are you talking about?
Return of the King,
Jurassic Park, yeah.
Two of the movies that are tied for like the most Academy Awards of all time. You know, that say what you will of that. You know, in its own right, for sure. If you don't like the Oscars, you don't like the Oscars. But those two movies are tied for the most Academy Awards of all time, along with what was it? Was Gone with the Wind or?
I think so.
Gone with the Wind, or Ben-Hur. I forget
one of those ones, right?
But you're telling me that within that 70-year span, no movie was made, but 10 of the best movies of all time were made after 2017. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, and it's crazy because, you know, obviously, you know, views change, or like what is interesting to like the public is always going to, like, you know, differ on a day-by-day basis, really. But it's like, yeah, like, come on, with 70 years of cinema, you're telling me like none of those were...
Dude, The Godfather's in that.
Rotten Tomato-tastic enough for you? Like, come on, like that's insane.
The Godfather's in that 70 years.
Yeah.
Like, you're I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? I don't get it. But Rotten Tomatoes, I don't know what they're hosting really poor. A really poor business practice. You know, when it comes to however the fuck they handle their critic reviews. But I mean, fuck them. I hate that. I absolutely hate that website.
All right, another one for me in the top 4 is Halloween series. I know that this is, you know, right on some, you know, fresh hills of Halloween Kills coming out like in a week. Halloween Kills, man, it kills so good. I don't know, like the story of Michael Myers. Don't get me wrong, like the first two were, I think, were really, really good. You know, Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode and all that. Like the whole premise was never really air for me, I guess. Like, I don't know, like you're babysitting something, this guy starts coming around like hacking you, and then, you know, the storyline just gets ridiculous. You know, Curse of Michael Myers, the church, him being like the avatar of this like demonic spirit, like some weird thing that's just that's always just such a stupid gimmick in horror films. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, how many freaking demons are just there waiting for host bodies, and like, this is what I choose as a murderer. And the remakes of Rob Zombie, like, you're wrong. Like, I could talk about Rob Zombie all day just as an overrated director in general, but like, I mean, horror and gore seems to be like his bread and butter.
Yeah.
But were a little bit more well received, I guess, with his whole like recreation thing. And was it Malcolm McDowell? Yes. As the Loomis that was pretty cool. I like that casting choice. But going into the last one, when they brought back Jamie Lee Curtis, like, I thought that movie was fine. I thought it was cool. I feel like that could have ended it. Like, that was it. Like, you know, she stopped him. Like, that was it. But, you know, obviously so those credits are done to see, you know, the hand come out of the fire, this and that. Like, it's the same, like, rinse repeat. Like, just at that point in the movie, I wouldn't even associate with that family. Like, dude, like, I know you can't babysit my kid. I know what's gonna happen. That guy's gonna come and just murder, like, every Halloween. Like, why don't we just skip the holiday? You know, like, this is all we're doing. Like, I don't know, man. Like, you can call that one lazy writing too if you want. I'm not trying to sound like a broken record. I just feel like the movie like that, it kind of lacks substance, and I feel like that's gonna be a little.
Yeah, it's getting something that worked, right? Like, you get your first one right, you make a movie and it comes out, you know, really cool, makes a lot of money, and then somewhere along the way you're on number 10, and for some reason you're still pulling in money because you're just putting it out on Halloween every single year. It's Fast and the Furious.
It's and you know that again, that's like the pattern you're going to see with almost every horror movie. Like, what horror movie can you name that's really just like one and done? Like, oh, that was it worked, blah blah blah. They're like, no, we can cash on this literally every year. Like, we're becoming next holiday, the next holiday, grab, the must see.
And then he did, what was it? Scream. I mean, the same thing happened with Screams. I Know What You Did Last Summer. I mean, all that kind of all that stuff.
And the crazy thing is, like, the what was it, like the first
I mean, even
Halloween.
Nightmare on Elm Street and Jason, like they're both the same
Absolutely,
exact thing,
absolutely.
just a little different.
Yeah. And until the remake of the remake, John Carpenter directed them, and John Carpenter is a master of horror. There's really nothing I can say negatively about his directing style. Obviously, he knows what he's doing, but it's just like, I don't know, man. Like I just feel like there could be more substance in it.
For sure.
What is really the motivation behind this? Like, Masked Man,
Yeah, no, I
this
agree.
phenom. Yeah.
I mean, especially whenever you get so many of those movies, they all just become so watered down. At some point, you stop fearing the character.
Oh, I can tell you exactly when I stopped fearing the character. I think it was Halloween 3, The Curse of Michael Myers. It was 3 or 4. It was when he was chasing, I want to say it was Lori through like the cemetery or something, and like the cops ambush him. And it's like a squad like of police officers like raining hellfire on this guy, machine gun, shotgun, and he's just like kind of like working back, taking it, like whatever. Enough to knock him down apparently. So they put him in the dunk tank at the local jail, and he breaks free and kills everybody because of course he does. And I just remember like even as a child seeing that, and I was like, wow, this is really dumb. Like apparently you can't stop this guy. And I think that's what really started my just like indifference to horror films. It's like, if you can't stop this thing, if there's like a monster or whatever, like what's the point of me watching it? Like, I don't need to watch this is stupid. You're literally saying that this is an unstoppable antagonist. Is that really interesting? Like, I don't think so. I'm sorry. That's ridiculous.
The point is, right, like the tension's built because you're trying to, like, even you as the audience, right, you're watching this movie and you're trying to figure out your own way, like how would I beat this thing? How would I beat this thing? And if by the end of the movie, it's shown that there is no option, like you just lose, I just be like, man, it's just a waste of time. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like there is no scenario in real life where you can't win. Like, there's always going to be an option for you to get out and you to win. Because realistic. There's no ghosts in real life. There's no monsters and all that kind of shit. So everything is based. Everything is based in reality. So there's always an option. So whenever it's portrayed that there is no option. I personally feel like that's a cop-out.
Absolutely. Like, there's suspension of disbelief, and then there's just fake out, like, well, I know this won't happen to me. Why would I put myself in that scenario?
Yeah.
I think that's why so many people like to, like, clown on, like, horror movies, or, like, you see so much parodies of this stuff, and it's just like, well, I just wouldn't go down to the basement. Like, whatever. Oh, I'm not going to go to that haunted cabin with my friends over summer break. Like, no. Like, of course you're not.
Because they know better.
Exactly.
Like you like to think that you know better, but if you're ever in that situation and something like that ever happened to you, of course, then it's going to be a completely different story. But that's the point of that's like all the fun of watching a horror movie is we all like to think that we know better, and so you spend the entire movie trying to, like in Scream, right? Do you remember watching Scream for the first time?
Absolutely.
I sat there thinking, who is it? Oh my god, it has to be one of these characters. Who is it going to be?
They base so much, like, on the and again, it's not quite satirical, but they even have like the rules, you don't have sex, you don't say I'll be right back, you don't go to the basement alone, that sort of thing, and each one of those movies had like the new rules that you had to follow.
And
it's like, okay, I just won't do that in real life. I won't go to the basement by myself. I won't do this, I won't do that. So yeah, I think it's just
For sure.
it takes that fantasy element right out of it. Just go into my little 3 here now that I'm on my rant. The Ring series, again, started off super strong with the first one, and again, kind of portray this to both the English and the original series, but just again, it just goes into the whole like realism thing. Like, if somebody gave you a fucking videotape on VCR that like just said, "Hey, watch this tape and you're gonna die in 7 days." I don't even think the most morbidly of curiosity thoughts, in my head would be like, well, maybe I should check this out. Maybe I'll be that 1 in a million that doesn't die after watching a videotape that people have told me kills them. No, I'm different.
Yeah.
I'm the one. It's just, it's ridiculous.
Curiosity killed the cat, that kind of thing.
Yeah, But I mean, at this point, it's just like, well, it's killed
I'd be
like
dead.
50 cats. Yeah.
I'd be dead, to be completely honest. Like,
Oh my
if you
God.
give me a tape and tell me you're gonna die in 7 days if I watch it, I'm gonna watch it that night. It's just the
Like-
moment I get home, like I'm gonna buy a VCR, I'm gonna order it on wherever I need to, and
You're
then
going
I'm
to
gonna
go
watch
through
it.
you're going through so much to guarantee your character's death in this scenario.
Well, it's not that. It's because coming at it from my perspective, where I don't believe in that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Like, I would have to just to see.
You hear it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from another. You've been messing around.
Exactly.
And it's just, I don't know, like, whenever you're like in that group scenario, it's like, hey, it's a movie night, it's at so-and-so's house, so what are you watching? I don't know, guys, you sure you want to do this? I'll be like, no, actually, I'll bow out, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to return this tape.
You said it's gonna kill you? Oh no, I'm gone. Bye. Not me.
See you in 6 days, because,
popcorn.
right? Number 7, we're all done. Oh, I can't.
Yeah.
It's not enough for me. Don't get me wrong. Again, going back to the first time I saw it,
Scary shit.
yeah, seeing what's her name, Samara, I think her name is, coming out of like the freaking
Yeah.
well, like that's terrifying.
Well, not just the
I don't
well.
ever-
For me, the scariest part of that movie was the moment like it left the screen, because from that point,
Oh
like,
yeah.
as a kid, right? Like I'm sitting there watching that and I'm thinking, oh shit, they can come through the TVs,
Yeah.
Of course
that's how
they
it's
can't.
getting, yeah.
Can't, but it's a scary thought for sure.
Yeah.
What was the movie that was made fun of about the phones? Oh, it was Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Yeah.
Sarah
What
Marshall.
happened if your mobile device?
Yeah.
Hello. That movie is just fantastic,
So
man. Oh
good.
my god.
My number 3, I might get a little bit of hate for this one, but it's absolutely true. My number 3 is gonna be Hellraiser, the first Hellraiser. The movie feels like a Lifetime movie to me, and just with these really awkward moments, of the wife, taking random opportunities to go upstairs and steal kisses from her husband's brother, who's like, a glob essentially.
Yeah.
And, to be completely honest, there's not really a whole lot of gore in that movie. For like, Clive Barker, Hellraiser.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
he's known for.
Yeah.
Like, there's really not a lot, and I just feel like to me, honestly, the movie feels a little bit more like a Lifetime movie than it does a horror movie. And the face of your entire fucking franchise has maybe 5 minutes of airtime throughout the entire movie, and he's by far the most drawing character about that series. That is who the series is supposed to be about.
Cenobites.
Exactly, and you get so little of them in the first movie, and it's just, I don't know. I've rewatching it recently, and just, like, how I've always felt about it is just, it's always been an awkward movie. And after rewatching it recently, it didn't feel any different to me then. I was just a whole bunch of overacting.
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone in the movie you hate.
Yeah, like, you can't really root for anybody as like a hero, because it's just like, oh, I'm better than you, I solved the puzzle box. The second one, I think it kind of gets a little bit more weirder with the whole doctor, and like, like he turns into one, like, and then like as the series goes on, like, it's just like more muddled, and they try to give like the Cenobites like their own backstories, and you see like him, that he was like a fighter in like World War II, and then he sold his soul to the devil and all this shit. And I do agree with you, definitely feels like a Lifetime weird, like, scorned lover story. And honestly, it kind of breaks it into like 2 separate movies. Yeah, like you're watching like the cheating wife, her goo boyfriend trying to feed him soul so he can like put his body back together, while exploring their deranged sex lives. And then here's like this weird cosmic horror like torture movie. It's like, okay.
Yeah, but in the first one you hardly get any of that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of just like, oh, you make the puzzle box so that it opens, and then you got to do it again, like seal them off, but only if make a deal with them and they let you go. But you got to watch out for how you say it, because they're known tricksters. It's just like, all right.
Yeah, honestly, Clive Barker also did like Candyman, and I personally think Candyman was, maybe 3, 4 times better than the first
Mhm.
Hellraiser.
And
Um,
it's almost like a more like simplistic plot too.
yeah,
Like
and
Candyman
it's
is
not even that gory. It's just like it's the lingering presence. Like it's the lingering presence in the first movie. Like
absolutely
you
urban
get a
legend,
glimpse
you know.
of of Pinhead like early on for sure, and then
Mhm.
you spend the rest of the movie wondering like, oh, when's he coming back out? But
Yeah.
in Candyman, right, they're actively searching for this person, so he's coming, like he's coming,
Mhm.
and it's just this looming danger that eventually makes itself known. But I think honestly, I think Candyman was a whole lot better than Hellraiser.
Yeah, and I think that's just a testament to like not having to have an overly complicated plot. You don't have to have something like, oh, once you solve 53 puzzles, you better watch out because you're going to be
Yeah,
faced with another challenge. It's just like, no, this guy, you say his name 3 times in the mirror, he comes out and he murders you. Like, there you go. As simple as I can make it.
yeah. And then um, like with Hellraiser, right? Because I know a lot of people love Hellraiser. Obviously,
Yeah,
he's one of the faces of horror. Like he's
absolutely.
one of the main faces of horror. Like whenever
It's
you look at him, you're thinking Freddy, Jason,
mm.
Michael Myers, and
Oh,
after that's probably either Chucky or Pinhead.
and it's funny that you mentioned that because we were talking about like how Vans just released their horror lines, and a lot of people aren't liking the shoes. You know, some of them feel too simplistic, and that they feel they didn't doing enough, especially with like the apparel.
Yeah,
Um, like the one for it's just like a yellow like balloon. It's like it's the yellow raincoat with like a balloon on it, and it's just like okay, like could have done more, but like there's not a whole lot of imagery you can use for that specifically. You know, the whole "you float too" thing, but they didn't do a Hellraiser shoe, and I always thought
yeah,
that was really interesting.
that's a good opportunity for it too.
Yeah, I'd rather have a Pinhead slip-on shoe than a freaking the two twins from Shining.
Yeah, but I mean, I know Hellraiser's like super well loved.
Yeah,
Sorry, it's just that's how I feel.
I, where else but at the shit taker you're gonna get opinions like this? Alright, going into my number two, it probably also gonna get some shit because I know people like to like bow down and praise these movies, but I'm putting both Midsummer and Hereditary on them. I feel like it's just part of that stretch of modern horror. It's such an like overly convoluted plot that ultimately like it doesn't mean anything. It's like the kid is living his life, whatever, has like weird warped visions at night, and then it just takes such a weird dive into like, oh, my sister has a nut allergy. Let me go drive her to the hospital, but she sticks her head out the window and gets it like decapitated. They go home and all of a sudden you're the scion for like this demon Pazuzu over here. So it becomes like this random demonic possession story. And it's just like, oh, well, if you were paying attention, you could have seen glimpses on the wall and shadows that weren't there. It's just like, my goodness, like I feel like that's all that modern horror is like turning into, though. Like it's just a
Yeah,
splash of jump scare with like this most has to be the most ridiculous plot yet. Like you have to understand it. You know, if you don't, you just don't really get the artistic expression.
yeah,
And it's just Midsummer is like kind of slightly better, but it's just like, oh, my family this and that, and then like, oh, I didn't want to break up with you, let's all go to this strange European island that nobody's ever heard of just in time for their harvest festival.
yeah.
That's cool. Thing I like more than being in a weird unfamiliar territory with rituals and practices that I don't understand. Slowly but surely they disappear, and then it's just like, oh well, take you into the tribe as our
Yeah.
fertile goddess, something like that. And it's just I don't know, man. Like
Yeah. Yeah. So my number two, it's also one of the. It's probably the worst horror movie I've ever watched. It's called "It Comes at Night." Have you seen that
okay,
one?
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Again, I don't even know what to say about this fucking movie, dude. I was just so disappointed, and it's like, what is the movie about? Like, what caused the post-apocalyptic status? Is there even a post-apocalyptic status, or are these kind of people are just, I guess crazy? Is it just Is it limited to one small area? I don't fucking know. It's not mentioned in the story. It's, as far as I know, the movie's about a fucking kid going through puberty who, every chance he gets at night, decides to be a little bit of a creeper. Is that what the movie's about? Is it about this kid who's just going through puberty? Like, I honestly, I couldn't tell you what that movie's about. It wasn't creepy. It wasn't odd. Like, I remember whenever it was coming out in theaters, everyone was making such a big deal about it, thinking it was going to be good, and then...
Next big thing.
You know, it's another one of those movies that's, you know, pretty highly rated across the board, and I'm just sitting here like, okay, who the fuck gave it that rating?
Yeah. Explain it if you can't. Like,
who's
you
blind,
know, like,
essentially?
whose line is it anyway? I understand, like, it's just one of those things that, again, it just keeps on coming down to conveyance. Like, if you're not making sure that people can follow along, you know, the mass population just going to be sitting there like, did you get it? And they're like, yeah, I got it. You got it? Oh, yeah, I totally got it. Yeah. I mean, you're an idiot if you didn't get it, right? I mean, it's so obvious, right? Like, yeah, definitely, buddy.
Well,
It's just...
the thing about this movie is it's like, what did anyone miss? There's hardly anything in the movie. There's not even a ton of dialogue. Like, there's nothing to miss. I just don't know what the fucking story's about, you know? Like, there's apparently a sickness that you can get that's transmitted from human to human. Who the fuck knows? No one knows anything specific about the fucking virus. Like, I don't know.
It reminds me of like The Happening, where they're like, oh, well...
Well, at least that was explained.
Yeah, but it was just like, well, the plants are angry. Fuck humans.
And, you know, it was in my Shyamalan, right?
Yeah.
It was a Shyamalan movie, so... Usually you don't get those clear explanations from M. Night Shyamalan. And he was very clear. Yeah, The Village, and even, like, you know, Lady in the Water. Like, you get these movies that are, like, really... like with an interpretive ending, Signs, you know?
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know, man. Like, if you're going to show me a goddamn movie that has essentially no fucking plot, except for these guys, or these families just trying to prevent any other family from entering their home because they don't want to get sick. But, like, it's explained like it's a force. Like, it's an actual force within the world. And, like, I don't know, fuck it.
Like, what are the rules? What are the parameters? Like, you're not telling me that. I don't get it.
You know what it feels more like? It feels more like, instead of like a movie, it feels more like an episode of someone's life. You know, like, for one day or for a week, someone filmed my activities over the course of that week. No one's gonna want to watch that. I wouldn't want to watch that shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be me going to and from work, being pretty fucking boring. Like, damn, but at least Truman Show. This was based on Jim Carrey, but
yeah, I'd rather watch Jim Carrey. I'm sorry.
Me too. But no, but like, I don't know. It feels like we got to see a week in these people's lives post-apocalyptic, and whatever they were scared of, whatever the fuck the story was about, we didn't get to experience that whatsoever. Well, there might have still been something there. Who knows? The only person that does know is probably the actual the creator himself. While there may have actually been something there, we'll never fucking know because we were never shown it.
Yeah. I honestly, at that point, like, you know, the post-apocalyptic setting, I think hurts more than helps. And I'd honestly have been more interested if it was just modern day crap, all like this stuff happening.
Yeah.
Like, they should be like, okay, well, here you go. There's other people interacting. Now we can see something that we didn't before. It's like you're trying to take away like any other like, I guess, questions from being like gathered by putting it like, oh, here's an isolated incident. Nobody else is around.
That was my least favorite movie that I've watched like in a long time. Probably the past 10 years.
Racking up number one for me. It's a bit of a bittersweet, but I definitely feel like they've just gone off the deep end in recent years. It's definitely going to be the Saw series for me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not like glorifying the whole like torture horror genre that seemed to really explode after these movies took off. But like the first three, I think were honestly pretty solid. He had the whole here's clues. The people in those movies weren't they weren't going up into something like, oh, we're getting stalked, we're getting like all those movies were like you already started, like you're waking up, you're like you're in this trap, like it's ultimately to you whether you live or die. You might have to like cut off a finger or disfigure yourself in some way, but like those traps were designed that somebody was gonna get out. And the whole like recompense thing, like how he felt like, oh, this person did this, they didn't appreciate their life, yada yada yada. And you're seeing Cary Ellis literally chop off his own foot with a rusty hacksaw to go save his family.
Yeah,
like, that was pretty crazy. And at the end of the movie, you're mystified by like this figure getting up off of floor as a corpse, and it's like, oh no, the guy was literally the killer the entire time. He was there with you. And the whole theme too, like the whole Hello Zep thing was like, I think it's like one of the coolest horror themes in modern cinema. Unfortunately, the best part of that movie is also the worst part, because by the third movie, Jigsaw's dead. He's dead. Like, he's not another man behind the mask. He's not like revived by some demonic force, something stupid like that. He's a human being. He had cancer, and then he was killed. He's dead. Yet, there's like 5 other movies after that where it's just like, oh, well, this was in case this happened, or this is like how many contingencies can you really have? And they tried the whole like, oh, well, this is The Apprentice, this is like the next one, and it just basically like devolved into unwinnable traps, and just like, oh, I killed this person because this person was getting too close to the truth.
Yeah.
And just going through these movies, like, you're watching, like, dude, like, is anybody ever gonna like figure this crap out that's not dead, or is he literally just gonna get away with it? Don't get me wrong, that last twist in the 7th one was pretty cool. I liked a lot of the callbacks that it had to do with the first Saw, but again, it could have just ended there and it would have been it. That would have been fine. Then you got like Jigsaw movie that was like, okay, well, this takes place 10 years before the first Saw. This is like the prototype set, and this kind of has to deal with that. And then by the end of the movie, it's kind of back in the modern day, and you're like, well, I'm just continuing seeing the legacy at the end of that.
Yeah.
Then Spiral tried to take it in this whole different direction with like, oh, it's from the book of Saw, like the world of Saw, but we're not gonna say that it's not a copycat killer. Don't get me wrong, like it was just cool seeing Chris Rock in anything, to be honest with you. But again, I just feel like those movies just missed the mark, and just again, it just became like the next Halloween, the next Halloween, the next Halloween movie. It just
oversaturation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, then it just becomes, how can we do bigger and better? And I don't know. I feel like you should never have to ask that question, is how can we go bigger and better? Like, obviously you always want to do better, for sure, and you always want to have something that is, a better end product. But if your better end product is just literally bigger and better, like, or just bigger, you know what I mean? Because that's really what it is. It's just, how can we go bigger? What better traps can we come up with? Because
exactly,
at the end of the day, like, that's really all that changed, was the scenario itself. Everyone's still in the same fucking story. It's the same fucking story every single time.
Absolutely.
So.
It's really funny that you say that, because like even in like the first Saw, there's like the drill trap that's like drills go into that guy's head, and they just stop it by shooting the drill bits off. So it was just like, okay, well, now we just got to get the guy out of the chair, and then the guy like walks forward, and like there's like a trap, but it's really just like the trigger wire, and then just 4 shotguns on the ceiling that just fire down.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like you just weren't supposed to step there and break that. Yeah, like honestly, yeah, of course, going forward, like some of the best parts of those movies were like the traps themselves. But yeah, whenever it got to the part where like the traps weren't winnable, there was no like way out, then yeah, it just got stupid to me. I'm just like, well, there's no freaking point, because again, like you put yourself in that situation. It's like, if you were that character, how would you get out? And it's just like, you can't.
Yeah.
Literally cannot. Like it's dumb.
All right, so my number one, closing out the whole series, is going to be the entire Conjuring series. This includes the Annabelle movies, the Conjuring movies, anything that's come from that initial
World.
storyline.
La
I just feel
Llorona,
like-
the Nun.
Well, sure. They're all basically
That's
the
all.
same movie.
That's all from the same
movie.
world. Yeah.
And man, it's just, I don't know. I have fun watching them, but like again, it's another one of those, it's Halloween time, and the next Conjuring movie is coming out, or the next. Well, they're just making a new Annabelle movie too, correct? What the fuck?
Yeah.
Why? Who the fuck wants to watch Annabelle 2?
There's like 3 Annabelle movies. The one that just came out was the one that just came out was The Devil Made Me Do It. It's like based on like the real. Of course, they're all supposed to be based on the backdrop of the real story, but it's like the first guy who claimed demonic possession as a defense in like an actual trial.
Yeah. You're talking about The Conjuring then?
Yeah.
No, I watched that one. Yeah.
Conjuring.
That was The Conjuring 3.
There's The Conjuring. There's Annabelle. There's The Conjuring 2. Yeah. Annabelle Creation. The Nun. The Curse of La Llorona. Annabelle Comes Home. The Devil Made Me Do It. Then The Crooked Man and The Nun Rise are the future movies in development currently.
So
there's like 9 movies.
Watching the Conjuring movies, it's basically just like being in a fucking haunted house, like a carnival haunted house or wherever the fuck, just a haunted house, not a real haunted house, just a haunted house where they're jumping out and scaring you. It's all about jump scares. There's no like actual substance to the horror itself. It's the same thing every single time. The newest Conjuring movie, they tried to take it in a little different route with it, which is the witchcraft. Did you watch the newest movie?
The Devil Made Me Do It?
Yeah.
That's the one with the trial.
Yeah. So I mean, that one they try and take it like in the form of witchcraft. And are you telling me that these two people, it's supposed to be based on a real story, or based on real events? They went and fucking battled a goddamn witch. Get the fuck out of here! Like, you're not fooling anyone anymore. Like, no one believes that these are based on real stories.
Every time you use that gimmick based on a real story, it's just like it's less believable. Like, I don't think this happened. And then you look in that crime, like the guy was obviously guilty, and he was guilty. They freaking sentenced him guilty. If you really thought that like the whole demonic possession thing was going to be an actual like excuse, brought him into court, and this is like in the 80s. Like I don't know how open-minded they would have been about that sort of plea in the first place, but like had that been like this whole precedent for like, man, father of 3 kills 50 people in like heated, lapse of judgment, and then he's just like, I was possessed.
I need to clarify something though. Like, I'm gonna watch every Conjuring movie that comes out. That's because I love Patrick Wilson.
Yeah, well, Patrick Wilson's cool.
That's it. Like, I like him that much that I'll watch every movie he's in. Maybe it's a bad idea on my part, but
if you're trying to go like solely for entertainment value on one actor, then I think that's a bad idea because he's
I know for sure.
It's gonna be
But he's a fun actor. Like he's one of those actors I really like watching. So I mean,
played a cool Ocean Master.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the Conjuring series, for me personally, it's the one. It's the one that's always the most overrated. Every single time a new movie's coming out, it's, oh my god, the new Conjuring movie's coming out. Everybody gets in a panic because, oh my god, finally there's something to get scared about. Well, they're jump scares, there's no substance to the horror itself. There's no actual fear being instilled. And if your idea of bigger and better is just literally going bigger and automatically it's going to be better, you're wrong, I assure you. Fast and the Furious, we were talking about it the other day. He mentioned like about the space, scene, and I was like, he said something to the effect of, "Well, who could have guessed that?" And I said, "Are you joking?" That is exactly what everyone's been saying forever. Is like, what happens when they go into space? Are we still going to be taking this seriously? And then they did it, and everyone's still taking it seriously. What the fuck? you have to be out of your mind at this point, right? Like,
we're racing tanks with like safes in the back, and it's just like, all right,
like don't get me wrong, right? Like, if you enjoy the movies, you enjoy the movies. There's something to say about those movies that are just turn off your expectations, just have some fun for a little while.
If you don't want substance, then go for it. Those are movies that at one time you're like wide-eyed with enjoyment. Like, oh my god, look at that, look at that cool car. Now he's racing on top of a mountain. Can he outrun the lava? Like, we'll find out.
But don't tell me. But don't tell me, or don't try and justify the movie itself or the bad decisions. Don't try and justify those bad decisions because they're bad. They are bad, and they're not helping the movie. Who thinks that they're helping the movie? I'm fully expecting that next Fast and the Furious movie is going to be them starting the Federation. You know what I mean? Like, it's Vin Diesel
racing planets.
Exactly. Vin Diesel's the one who starts it, and that's where we start our space exploration. Is Vin Diesel's going to be the fucking leader?
I'm calling it right now. At the end of Fast and the Furious 11, or you heard it here first at the shit take. Vin Diesel drives his car so fast and so furiously, he opens a time vortex and goes back to the original Fast and Furious movie, and therefore causes the causality loop. And it's all going to begin where it ended, 1/4 mile at a time. That's my theory right now. I'm sticking to it.
I don't know how we got on the Fast and Furious, but my god, dude, that's how I feel though. Like, just because you're going bigger and like, fuck it, man. There's no defending it. I honestly, that's how I feel about every one of those movies. They're just all pretty much the same way. I mean, if you can't see it and you enjoy those movies, then by all means enjoy those movies. But me personally, I mean, I'll watch every one of them, but that's just because I like watching everything horror. I'll watch every single movie, and even besides like horror, I'll watch anything in general. You know that, but like, don't sit here and pretend that you're giving me some kind of like quality fucking film, based on
Academy Award winning.
There's some cool graphics in it for sure, but.
Yeah, I think with the whole like respect to the whole Annabelle thing, like if you want to watch like a murderous doll, just watch Chucky. At least if you want to splash, the jump scares are there, but that doll is literally gonna run after you with like a freaking chainsaw, a cleaver. You're seeing a visual threat as it's coming at you. There's voodoo spells in there too, so.
You don't have any special mentions, any honorables?
This goes back if you count Twilight as a horror or not.
Yeah.
Those movies sucked.
I wouldn't count it as a fucking horror.
Right, like, at what
More
point
like a
does
horror?
You should keep that in there. At what point does vampires, werewolves, and the supernatural not become horror? They put that romantic backdrop on it.
The moment that you make it
beats
like
me.
Twilight.
Yeah, right. Huh.
It's
when the oh damn becomes glitz and glam.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, it's the romance for me. Like, the moment it becomes about romance, and it's what takes center stage, right? Like, for me, that's how
absolutely, yeah.
Exactly. Like, what takes center stage?
You could have that story be about anything but like they didn't have to be vampires and werewolves. It would have been the same fucking story.
Exactly. They could have just been normal people who lick on each other.
It's actually ironic you say that because it started off like as like a Harry Potter fanfic, so that's literally what it was about, like regular people.
People are so weird, man.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's our personal top fives. We went through each of ours. If you agree, let us know. If you disagree, tell us what your tops are. We always want to hear from you.
Absolutely,
No, go ahead.
Sorry. Basically just what he said, you agree, disagree, have suggestions. What are your, most overrated horror films. Sound off in the comments below. As always, we'd love to hear from you. Create that dialogue. What's your thoughts?
So the week following, or next week's going to be our underrated movies. The week following is going to be our personal top fives. We'll go through each of ours, top five of all time. And I'm not saying like my favorite, because my favorite, maybe we can do favorites and top.
Yeah, top five favorites, top five. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And then following that week, we'll have, I guess we're gonna have a free week. We're gonna be putting out shorter videos too in the meantime that aren't Halloween related.
Yeah.
So look for those as well. And but yeah, I mean, aside from that, just you know where to find us. And I'm Stella B.
Mara for the win.
And we'll see you next time.
Y'all take care.